there, very good afternoon and welcome to this special edition of Insight. I'm joined here by the Honorable Attorney General and the Minister of Legal Affairs, Anil Nandlall. Minister, good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Eddie, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Of course, this afternoon we want to narrow our focus on the developing situation in West Coast Berbice. Of course, you're aware just 2 days ago the bodies of two young men were found, Isaiah and Joel Henry, brutally murdered in the backlands of the Cotton Tree village on the West Coast Berbice. I have the Attorney General here with me this afternoon to have some discussions around what happened there and of course the developments that would have taken place ever since the incident. Minister, let us talk a little bit about the death of these two young men in the most gruesome manner, which has really to some extent created outrage among Guyanese in the manner in which these youngsters were killed.
Eddie, today and the past few days have been very tense and sobering times in our country. We witnessed the inexplicable and brutal slaying of two young men in the backlands of Cotton Tree Village, West Coast, Berbice. From the information available to the public, it appears as though they went to pick coconuts in the backlands, as they would normally do. And there they were confronted and met their demise in the most brutal and horrendous manner. The manner in which they were killed is most reprehensible. And understandably, it has evoked tremendous reaction, grief, shock, anguish, pain, horror, anger, and understandably so. The people of the surrounding villages have reacted, and they reacted in the way that they have done, and we all know what is unfolding, and we will get into that. So my first duty here is to condemn in the strongest possible manner the brutality which was meted out to these two young men, no matter what they may have been accused or suspected of doing. That which was done to them is absolutely inexcusable, absolutely inexcusable. And to their parents, to their grieving relatives, to their friends and to their villagers, personally and on behalf of the government of Guyana, in particular His Excellency the President, I convey our deepest condolences. I know that His Excellency the President has spoken to the parents of the deceased persons and have expressed his commiserations personally and on behalf of the government. And I also know that he has made certain commitments to them. The police, as you know, was activated at the very highest level. The President has instructed the Minister of Home Affairs to ensure that every resource available to the government is unleashed into the investigation of this horrendous tragedy. Yesterday, I sat at a meeting of the National Security Council, and again, the President instructed that a joint operations commence between the Army and the police, and that all resources of the Army be made available to this joint operations, including the use of a chopper if necessary. I know also that currently as I speak, the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Minister of Human Services, and the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs are on the ground currently dealing with the situation. I also know that in the joint operation that has started, you have 82 ranks and 3 officers from the Tactical Service Unit of Georgetown. From Region 5, you have 76 ranks and 3 officers. From the Guyana Defense Force, you have 83 ranks and 6 officers. And you have also members of the Guyana Prison Service. I say all of that to say to the public that the government is sparing no resource. The government is absolutely committed to ensure that this investigation is adequately resourced, and that those who are in charge of the investigation have all the capacity and apparatus and resources necessary to bring the perpetrators to justice. There is no ambiguity and ambivalence in the government's position on this matter in terms of doing a professional, comprehensive investigations, and to ensure that those who are implicated face the full force of the law at every level. I am also aware that 7 persons, I believe, are in custody from Cotton Tree and neighboring villages. And they are not from one ethnicity alone. And they are assisting the police with their investigations. Among the persons arrested are persons who are vendors of coconuts in the locality, not necessarily from Cotton Tree. And various theories are being explored by the police. However, we have seen that the events have turned in a particular direction. A direction that can help no one. A direction that can only catapult our country into an area and an arena that no sensible, peace-loving Guyanese would ever want us to go. Various blockages of the roads at various intervals along the west coast of Berbice have taken place over the past 48 hours. Numerous persons have been beaten, robbed, vehicles burnt. Houses have been stoned, broken into, destroyed. Traffic at various areas have come to a complete halt, blocking off thousands of people from carrying on the everyday activities of their lives. Those people have done nothing wrong. They are not in any manner implicated in any wrongdoing, certainly not the wrongdoing that is supposed to have engendered this reaction. And this, what is going on now, and what have been taking place on the roadways over the past 48, if not 72 hours, cannot be condoned in any form or fashion.
But, Minister, if you can stick a pin there, before we get to even deeper into what is happening on the roadways and so on, we have seen, leading politicians, if you want to call them, venturing into the village. I mean, the very night of this incident, we have had persons gone in there, began to cast aspersions, including members of parliament, fanning the flames of racism and division among the people, trying to point fingers without the police even commencing an investigation. And we've heard very strong statements from very prominent politicians in the opposition within the last 24 hours or so, including statement from the former president, and I'll be pointed in this one, where he basically said to those who have blocked the roads, those who have been terrorizing people as they try to pass, they're innocent people, that their actions are justified.
I am on public record on repeated occasions arguing that there is a particular grouping of political leaders who have failed their constituency and have failed Guyana abysmally as leaders. And it is from that rank, or those ranks, that the persons to whom you are making reference come. One has to be desperate. One has to be sadistic. One has to be utterly selfish for one to convert such a horrendous human tragedy into a political issue and to kick it about like a political football. There are certain issues in a society that are so serious and so fundamental and so grievous that they must be treated specially and especially. Politicians who are mature, who have the interest of their country at heart, and who have the interest of their people at heart, instinctively recognize those issues and treat them with the type of attention that they deserve. You have rogue politicians who care not and who only see their selfish survival. And when an issue presents itself, no matter what damage it does to even their own supporters, no matter what damage it does to the fabric of our society, they pounce upon that political opportunity and they exploit it absolutely. And we have here showcase to Guyana a very clear and present example of what I am speaking about. Now, from any perspective that you examine this tragedy that we are discussing, you cannot find a political nexus or connection. It has nothing to do with politics. It is simply a horrible and horrifying crime committed in the most brutal manner. And that is all that it is. In a charged atmosphere, persons have reacted because they are being psyched up politically. The politician now, recognizing this, rather than go there and take the position of leadership and take positions that can quell the situation, the politician of the type that I'm speaking about goes there and exacerbate, inflame, enrage, aggravate. And that is what we saw when these reckless statements are being made. Even the parents, the people who are feeling the real grief, the people who are suffering the real anguish, they spoke. Twice I have heard them. They spoke to the president as well. And every moment that those two grieving people get, they make it very clear that their children's or their child murder had nothing to do with politics, and that they are not in agreement with what is going on and the way that their grief is being taken advantage of and made into a platform to do politics, to violate the law, to beat people, to destroy property, private and public, to create pandemonium and mayhem, and to violate the rights and freedoms of the people of this country. And that is what people have used this occasion to do. And that cannot be condoned. And the joint service, the army and the police, in joint operations, have been placed on the ground with firm instructions to restore public order in that part of Guyana. Before I conclude on this issue, I want to say that it is the duty, not merely the responsibility, but the duty of every sensible, law-abiding, and rational Guyanese to do that which is necessary to arrest the situation before it descends further. Eddie, there is nothing good that can come out of this. You have people who are the victims, innocent victims, and they have kept their peace, fortunately. They have not reacted. For how long will those people allow themselves to be violated, to be beaten, for their properties to be broken, for their homes to be looted in this manner? We are appealing to both the victims as well as the perpetrators, we are appealing to every Guyanese to do that which is necessary or which are necessary to ensure that there is not a perpetuation of this, what is going on the road at West Coast Berbice.
Minister, I raised the issue of politicians getting involved, and we clearly saw that maybe in the instant reaction of citizens expressing outrage of the manner in which the youngsters were killed and so on, may have assembled on the road to make a statement. But we saw clearly within a matter of hours where there was a complete political hijack of that protest, which was intended maybe to express the way the community felt. There was a total political hijack, and you had nakedly, so to speak, politicians, prominent politicians, and others making statements which are clearly fanning the flames of racism and division. I want to ask you, in your capacity as Legal Affairs Minister and Attorney General, how do we use the law to ensure that we don't allow people to further divide us, not only with statements that they would have made there, but we're seeing also these statements are finding themselves on social media. How do we treat with this to ensure that our country remain united?
You have raised some very critical issues there that require a very mature approach, not only in answering them, but in enforcement of the law. First of all, let me assure that the Constitution of our country guarantees as a fundamental right and freedom the right to protest actions. Our government encourages and will never attempt to deny persons their right to peaceful protests. But as the terminology suggests, it is peaceful protests. We, while we were in opposition, for 5 years, we engaged in peaceful protestations. When that did not work, we used the floor of the parliament, another democratic institution, to canvass our political concerns and our grievances. And we also use the judiciary, another democratic institution, to prosecute our cases in relation to our political agenda. And all these are democratic platforms that persons in a free society can take advantage of. What we are seeing taking place and what have taken place at West Coast Berbice on the roadways over the past 72 hours cannot be described as peaceful protest actions. I have seen images of blood. I have seen images of people being wounded. I have seen images of fire. I've seen images of vehicles being burnt, and dozens of people have called me on the phone to express fear and express apprehensions and inform me that they have been robbed and beaten and assaulted in the most horrible manner. So it is not peaceful protest. So, Eddie, what is going on there is riotous conduct. And the laws of our country outlaw riotous behavior. It outlaws mob behavior. It outlaws assault, battery, and wounding. It outlaws malicious damage to property. It outlaws damage to public property. It outlaws blocking public roadways. All of these things are taking place in clear violation of the law. The law enforcement agencies have been put on the ground to deal with the situation. But one cannot discount the high level of emotion that underpins the situation. And therefore, one has to be very careful in how one seeks to enforce the law, because you're not dealing with an ordinary situation. You're dealing with a situation that has many dimensions: a political dimension, an ethnic dimension, an emotive dimension, and others. So one must be careful. Then you have, in terms of freedom of expression, the Constitution of our country guarantees freedom of expression. But that does not include the right or the freedom to excite racial hostilities or any type of hostilities among different segments of our population. We have the laws of cybercrime, the Cybercrime Act, and that in a comprehensive way outlaws racial utterances and publications on the airwaves, on the social media platforms. And we have a Racial Hostilities Act that also creates a series of offenses in relation to exciting racial hostilities and things connected therewith. So it is not that we don't have the law. We have a whole network of laws. But we have asked the law enforcement agencies to concentrate not necessarily at this point in time on enforcement, but to clear the roadway, to allow persons to pass, let the heat cool down a little, let the anger subside a little, and perhaps then people are going to see things a little clearer, and they can behave in a little more mature way and in a more reasonable way, and eventually in a lawful way. But there will come a time where if this kind of behavior continues, then the full force of the law will have to be applied, because that is the state's responsibility.
But Minister, if I can interject, I hear you on wanting the dust to settle and the situation to, some normalcy to be restored. But the issue really here is not so much the people who are upset and are angry and are on the ground maybe protesting and so on, but you have what we call ever so often the keyboard warriors, who include many prominent politicians using social media to spread hate, to spread division. There has to come a time, I would suspect, where we'll try to control that and bring that under control, because that is fueling a lot of the division that we may see emanating from protests of this nature.
Well, Eddie, it goes back to what I'm saying that we have and we have to deal with, and I agree. But I want to remake the point again, that there is no responsible politician, there is no sensible politician who should use this occasion and this platform to do what we are seeing they are doing. These are people who are unfit to be part of the leadership architecture of our country. And at some point in time, the population itself will deal with those persons. But I agree that those who are not on the ground, but who are the intellectual authors, safely in the confines of their homes, but using the internet to spread and spew the hatred, the antagonism, the strife, will have to be dealt with in due course. These things are recorded. They are all recorded. And that's what I'm saying to you. That at this point in time, you know, you can't, law enforcement is not about force alone. Law enforcement must be entwined and intermingled with emotional intelligence and appreciation of the situation on the ground, and one must react depending upon what is the situation that one is reacting to. Because if the reaction from the law enforcement is in some way disproportionate and doesn't take into account the various nuances, emotions and otherwise, that presents itself as a compendium, there can be a combustion that can be, where there can be even a greater conflagration. The law enforcement role at this stage is not necessarily enforcement, but appeasement until we can restore normalcy. But I am saying, and I am hoping that my brothers and sisters who are on the road and who are instigating and who are actively participating in these activities that I'm referring to will understand that that can't get them anywhere. Certainly it has nothing to do with the two murders. Nothing at all. And what is being done there is completely unlawful. And at some point in time, unless the situation is arrested and it subsides, then a different approach will have to be adopted by the state. And we are hoping that that does not have to, we don't have to resort to that. That the state's machinery doesn't have to activate itself into that gear. And then the other component are the victims who have done nothing wrong. Their only wrong, quote and unquote, is because they happen to be on the road. You and I, the cameraman who's here, could have been in that circumstance. Most of these people don't even know. They did not know that there would have been blockage on the road. And they are caught victims. Some of them are stranded on either side of the Berbice River. Some live on that side and they are caught on this side. Some live on this side and they are caught on that side. And they have been there for 2-3 days. It is simply not right. And this kind of behavior that I see cannot be justified on no ground. The kind of shouting and running and bombastic behavior. To what end? To achieve what objective? They are not even connected to the deceased. This is simply criminal conduct. And as cautious and as careful as we are trying to be, as understanding as we are trying to be, we are hoping that we don't have to go in a different direction to deal with this situation. And we also hope that we can continue to ask those who are the subject and victims of this assault some form of compensation, some form of well, whatever the compensation, whatever form it takes, will have to be looked at for those people as well. But the important thing is for not to get the two sides into an aggressive exchange, because that may be something that we cannot control, none of us.
Minister, in closing, I just want to, I know you have made the call throughout your discussion here, but I just want to, speaking directly to the people who are on the streets in West Berbice, who I believe may have been misled as a result of the rhetoric from the politicians, the opposition politicians who would have visited the area, who from the onset, without having any information or facts at their disposal, sought to paint a picture as though this was somehow a quote-unquote race war, riling people up to be on the streets. What do you want to say to those folks whom, like I said, may have been misled to go out there to behave in that manner?
There are two sets of persons, Eddie. Those who I know, and I've been following the incident from the beginning, who were not misled. They chose this opportunity to do wickedness. They chose this platform to do wickedness. Nobody had to mislead them. And they know who I'm talking about. Those are the people who we have to condemn in the strongest possible way and talk to them seriously that, they have to stop. And then you have those who are the victims and whose emotions would have been riled up and who have been encouraged and aided and abetted and excited to move into this direction. We are appealing to them as well, that whatever it is that they're doing there, what is it achieving for whom? They loot a bread truck. So what you get from that? A couple loaves of bread? Well, is that what you're doing? You beat up somebody, so what? What you get from that? That makes you a better person? That achieves some objective of yours? It advances the welfare of your family? They looted a drinks truck. So they carried away a few cases of drinks. Does that advance your welfare? Does it educate your children? Does it give you a new home? What kind of behavior is this in the year 2020? And these are the things, Eddie, that we cannot condone. We have 3 ministers who are on the ground. And the president is following the situation very closely. He and I are speaking very closely. He has been speaking to the families of the victims on a regular basis. And we have our members of parliament on the ground. And if possible, if this doesn't subside, we will have more ministers going on the ground. Because the government is prepared to go there. We are not going to be a government who will sit in Georgetown and allow our country to descend. So tomorrow, unless this thing stops, you will have a greater presence of the government there. And we will have to engage the people. Personally, I am prepared to do that.
Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, I want to thank you for joining me this afternoon, of course, to update the nation on the situation in the West Berbice area and all that you're seeing that is happening in the West Berbice area. The genesis, to some extent, or the basis on which this escalated, it started as a result of the gruesome murder of two young men. But what we're hearing now is that it has degenerated. There has been a political hijack of the protest that started, and the situation on the ground is being monitored by the government. So again, Minister, thanks for joining us. And of course, we're going to continue to update you as the situation unfolds in the West Berbice area.